Hello, and welcome to our video audio podcast, Couched in Color. I'm your mental health expert, teen and young adult crusader, and psychological scientist, Dr. Alfie. This podcast reflects my life's work, helping our young people and young at heart identify mental health challenges, disrupt negative patterns, and discover the best versions of themselves. I'm so happy that you've joined us. For over 20 years, I want you to know that I've had my finger on the pulse of BIPOC teen mental health. I recognize that historically and currently, with these dual pandemics of COVID and racial injustice raging, our young people are suffering, sometimes they're struggling, and always the care that they need is quite scarce. So each week, I'm joined by young people, mental health experts, celebrities, and influencers to help us uncover the secrets to healing the hearts and minds of our BIPOC teens, their families, and their communities. Here at Couched in Color, we believe deeply in spreading love and light, bolstered by culturally relevant science. So let's dive in. So, everybody out there who listens to Couched in Color and watches us, it is my pleasure. Got my new mic, y'all, so you got to forgive me, to introduce someone I haven't known a really super long time, but in the time that I've known her, she has been honestly a gift and a blessing just because of who she is, the kind of person she is, the kind of work that she does. I have learned so much, and I know you will learn a lot listening to her today too. And so I want to open the floor and do a big welcome. It's just us, but do this big welcome for this wonderful young woman, Solomé Tibebu. Welcome, Solomé.
Thanks so much, Dr. Alfie. So
You,
excited to be here.
oh, thank you. So I wonder if you can tell people, I want to bookend it, start and end with telling people a little bit about who you are and where they can find you, like, if you want them to. Do you know what I mean? Like your company and that kind of thing. Please share anything you would like so that they can go look you up. Because that's what people are going to do. They're going to go Google you anyway.
Yes, absolutely. So I have always been involved with mental health, technology, innovation as long as I can remember. So of course I'm on all the social media. Solomé Tibebu is my handle on Twitter, LinkedIn. I've got Facebook pages for all of the things. So please follow along. But yeah, I happy to share more about my story and basically, I had really bad anxiety and struggled with obsessive-compulsive disorder as a teenager. Basically, that entailed intrusive thoughts about all sorts of uncomfortable, embarrassing things that I wasn't comfortable talking to friends and family about, but they were accompanied by these compulsions and these strange physical behaviors I had to do out in the world, which of course other people started noticing. So had a lot of distress around that. And I tell people frequently that, my family, my father's from Ethiopia, my mother's from Poland. They didn't even have a phrase for obsessive compulsive disorder when they learned that was my diagnosis. So that ended up causing all sorts of challenges, just navigating how to get help. Like, what is this even? I didn't know what I was experiencing. They didn't either. Ultimately, I did get the help I needed, thankfully. But around that time, I realized that there weren't a lot of resources online for other teens like myself. I think back frequently to going to the corner of Barnes and Noble and reading as much as I could about anxiety and OCD, and just having that access to psychoeducation and understanding what is it that I'm dealing with was really empowering for me. And I thought, why can't other teens have access to this information more easily? So in 2006, when I was in high school, I started anxietyandteens.org, which was just a blog, but really my first taste of mental health, the internet, technology, and I continued that blog and nonprofit for 10 years, which eventually launched me into a career in this space.
Oh, that's amazing. So I guess I'm sitting here making all these faces. I'm like, wait a minute, what 16-year-old or 15, I don't know, you said high school. What high school kid has the wherewithal to go start researching on their own about mental illness. So what do you think it was about Solomé, little Solomé, that made her decide, this is the way that I'm going to learn more about this? 'Cause I think it's true. And like you shared that you're a multiracial woman. And I think for a lot of us who are people of color, including multiracial people, including marginalized young people, if you don't have anybody at home to really teach you about these things, I don't know. I guess I feel like sometimes it goes into a vacuum with kids. What was it about young Solomé that made her decide, I'm going to go look this stuff up and find out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, so like I said, my parents didn't really know what was going on with me, but their commitment to get me the help that I needed was always there and always strong. And so thankfully, we did have resources that I could try a few therapists, try some medications. Unfortunately, it wasn't until the fourth clinician that I could connect with, that I really actually started getting better. And I feel like what he did differently was actually took the time to explain to me what is OCD. And he'd
Mm-hmm.
draw these pictures and map it
Mm,
out for me.
mm-hmm.
And so that was the first taste of the psychoeducation. And I just wanted even more of that since then.
I love that. So your parents you stuck with it until you found somebody who fit. And I think that's a really important message people have to hear, that the first person you go see may not be the person who's the best fit. And so it was really important that you had that support. That's the second thing. Kids have to have support. They have to have an adult. It doesn't necessarily have to be a parent. You were fortunate. You had two parents who were committed. But it needs to be an adult who feels safe to the young person, and who, I don't know, wants to support the kid and listen to the kid and get them some help. So for you, it sounds like you had all of that, which is a perfect storm. But even with all of that, you still had to try different people. And I think one of the single most important things you just shared is that the provider took the time to explain what was happening. Like, I don't know why we do this thing where we assume kids or people know what it is that they're dealing with just because they can come in and talk about a few symptoms. Like, they don't know where those symptoms are coming from. They don't know why they're feeling like that. And, a lot of people, I'm not saying you, a lot of people feel shame and guilt because they're like, well, why am I the person who's dealing with this? My friends aren't dealing with this. These other people I know aren't. Like, why is it me? And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, maybe was there something that you took from that experience, the whole experience of identifying that something was going on, having parents who were supportive, going and doing your own research, and then having a good provider. Was there something you took from that whole experience that obviously it informed anxiety in teens, but then beyond that, that carried you into the work that you do now? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about what that was?
Absolutely. Uh, First and foremost, it was clear to me, even at that time, that I was fortunate to have access to these resources. And that is hardly the case even still today.
Right.
So that really troubled me a lot. Secondly, was at the time, Anxiety in Teens was a very basic website. We had forums. If listeners can even recall what those were about. And now, since then, we've all sorts of social media has proliferated since then. Technology has changed so much. But it was also clear that that was going to be a means to get more resources to youth who might not otherwise get it.
Yes.
Technology, that is.
Yes.
So I've always been really interested in that topic. So it wasn't around college that I decided I wanted to pursue this a little bit more. And junior year, I thought of a concept that was basically online cognitive behavioral therapy homework exercises for patients, and then information analytics for the providers who serve them. So this was back in Minnesota, junior year, started this startup, got a little bit of funding, brought together the clinicians and programmers, and we built the modules and partnered with some partial day and residential programs in the area to try it out. But it's just so interesting that years later, now this whole world has just exploded. Mental health tech apps across the board. And There are definitely some pros and cons about all of that, but super promising.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And so whatever happened with what you developed? Do you still have that? Is it still out and available? And
That's a good question. Let's just say 20-year-old me really underestimated
okay.
launching an enterprise healthcare startup. A lot harder than I thought.
Okay. Okay.
So did it for a few years, but that was it.
Okay. Got it. Got it. So if we transition a little to now, can you just tell us a little bit about what you see through your work? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your company. What do you see as the behavioral health tech landscape? And I'm thinking specifically about the conversation you and I had for this amazing conference that you put on, virtual. I was going to say digital, virtual or digital conference. I wonder if you would is that still available online? Can people access that? Would
Yep.
you tell us a little bit about that too? Because I want people to hear where they can go learn more. But then after you do that, can you just talk about like sort of what have you seen? How has it grown? What are your thoughts on how it is can be the same question you asked me, can be or maybe cannot be an equalizer in terms of access to care for adolescents across different populations?
Yes, absolutely. So that while that particular startup product didn't pan out, it led to my deepening of work in this space. And
Okay.
so after working for a couple different venture funds, investing in digital health solutions, and working for larger behavioral health software companies, for the last few years, I've been out on my own, consulting all stakeholders in behavioral health tech and innovation. So funds, foundations, large chronic disease companies, early stage mental health startups. And so really my goal has been convening the community and advancing the field as it relates to mental health technology and innovation. And earlier in the year, as the pandemic, of course, is unfolding,
Yeah.
it was clear to me that all of the conferences were going to get canceled, and the opportunity to convene with other mental health innovators was pretty much eliminated. So I don't know what exactly I was thinking that I had to do this, but I said, I'm going to organize the Going Digital Behavioral Health Tech Summit. So that's how it came to be. I was really pleased to have over 75 amazing speakers like yourself, where we talked about how the industry has pivoted so quickly in light of COVID-19 to leverage telehealth and other digital health tools to support people's mental health. So it is completely available, still free for everyone. If you go to behavioralhealthtech.com, you'll be able to access all those videos.
So what I'm going to try to remember to do, that's why I'm going to say it on here, is to put the name of it. I'm going to add a little caption so that people can find out the name. Because I think one of the things that you're doing, which is a great segue, and I'd love to get your thoughts, is creating the space for anybody who has an internet connection and a device, right? Because you can watch this on I was looking for my iPhone. You can watch this on your iPhone, your Android device, whatever, your iPad. Everybody's got some kind of technology. And what's really interesting is that research tells us that for particularly Black and Latinx teens, they're all connected with smartphones, right? It's like upwards of 80% of them. The last time I looked, it was like 88% in each of those ethnic groups. So the kids have smartphones, right? So if they can get in Wi-Fi land, even if it's not at home, they have access. And I love that. And so what are your thoughts about, given you know this landscape better than anybody, what are your thoughts about what the technology is able to do right now around issues of diversity and addressing those points of diversity for young people? And then where do you feel like the gaps might be? And then that gaps question is going to lead us to this other amazing thing that you're doing, but we'll hold off on that. So what are your thoughts?
Yes. So, um, as I have said all along, I think there's a lot of promise in mental health tech solutions. I'm of the opinion that to really be successful in supporting the end users or seeing real behavior change, it has to be provider driven digital. So that's my perspective.
Okay.
There are a lot of solutions that are standalone, which I think are
Mm-hmm.
a great first step.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about just those, that we have to make sure that the content is relevant for all
Mm-hmm.
users.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been an issue for a long time. But then when you start introducing real humans who are coupled with the digital content to
Mm-hmm.
actually support, counsel, coach um, different people who are using the technologies, then you have to ask, okay, are those culturally competent
Yeah.
coaches,
Yeah.
do they understand the
Mm-hmm.
communities that they're looking to serve?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think those are some pretty important aspects for these kinds of tools.
Oh, I love it. You speaking my language. I always tell people it's not about racial matching. That's not the issue. The issue is, I always say, an empathy match. And
Mm,
an empathy match has to be informed by our knowledge of different cultures, different groups, different experiences, right? I don't know what it means to be a biracial woman, but I know what it means to be a woman, and I know what it means to be a person of color. And I can go look up the literature,
mm,
right? That's not going to speak to Solomé's particular experience, but I can learn something about what does it mean to be multiracial. I was reading, I know I'm gonna say her name wrong. My kids are gonna be like, Mom, get it right. Saweetie, the rapper. She's
mm,
biracial. Her mother's Filipino, Chinese, her father's Black, right?
mhm,
And just reading, it was a quick article, but reading about her, you probably saw it too. I got it from Twitter.
mhm,
Right? What, like, she's never Asian enough or Black enough. Okay, I can understand that. So if someone comes to me and they have a multiracial identity, I understand when they're saying things like, I'm never enough for anybody. I have context for that. That doesn't mean I know what it means to be Filipino, Chinese, and Black, right? Or Polish and Ethiopian, but I know what it means to have both of those be a part of who you are. And in Saweetie's case, feeling kind of torn, like people are always asking you to choose.
mhm.
So that's when I say cultural competence, that's the kind of stuff that I mean. And people hear cultural competence and they think, well, how can you expect me to learn every single solitary thing there is to know about every single solitary group? That's not the point, right? That's like so not it. It's just being open to the possibility of, if you don't know something, you're going to listen to somebody explain it to you, or you're going to go look it up. So it doesn't sound like it's coming, like it's another language that you don't understand. So I love that you brought in this conversation about cultural competence and making sure that the work that we do is informed both by science, but I love what you said about it's got to have a provider piece and it's got to have an end user piece. It can't just be what you call standalone.
Mhm.
And so with all of that, I hope it's okay for us to talk about this other amazing thing that you are doing,
Mhm.
just so people can have some knowledge about it. Because there's a lot of folks out there who I'm sure have these great ideas or have been doing the work and would love to hear about this opportunity that you're also leading, which they couldn't have picked a better person to lead.
Thanks so much.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
I am thrilled to announce um, the Upswing Fund for Adolescent Mental Health. We just launched officially last week. It is a collaborative fund that is focused on supporting adolescent mental health, especially adolescents of color, LGBTQ adolescents. We are seeded by Pivotal Ventures, which is Melinda Gates' personal investment company and incubation company, and we're powered by Panorama Global. And I am leading it, and I'm just really thrilled for this opportunity now more than ever. This is such an important need and cause, and um, just really excited about all of it.
Oh, I love it. So, I understand what it's for, right? It's for adolescent mental health, particularly for our kids who are marginalized, whether that's marginalized by race, ethnicity, or marginalized by gender identity or sexual orientation. I understand that part. And if someone is interested in how can I get engaged with this or how can I get involved, I know they can go to the website, but what is it that the Upswing Fund is hoping to do? I know the focus is adolescent mental health. What are you hoping to do within that space of adolescent mental health?
Yeah, so more specifically, the fund came about as a result of the pandemic. I don't have to explain, you already know how much the pandemic has impacted adolescents, especially with school closures, and for mental health providers who are serving them, how they're being impacted financially, social isolation. So really, what was already a huge issue is now just exasperated by COVID-19. And so the Upswing Fund, we are focused on supporting the organizations who are either providing direct services to adolescents or organizations that are looking to strengthen the entire ecosystem for adolescent mental health. The way that we're doing this is through two different grant types. And we just announced the RFPs for both of them last week. They're open. The first one is called Surge Capacity Grants. And those are focused, again, on direct service providers. So this could be traditional mental health clinics who are serving adolescents ages 10 to 18 in our target populations, but it could also be community-based organizations who are doing that work, who are accessing the populations we're trying to reach more successfully. So those are going to range from 10,000 to 100,000 each, and really intended to provide direct, immediate, rapid response, general operating support.
Love it.
So our second types of grants, the systems enablers, these are really for providing immediate funding to organizations who are working to strengthen the entire ecosystems. They perhaps have an innovative approach to really improving access to mental health over the long term. The point with this group is that we wanted to be flexible for how they were delivering on their mission. So they could be disseminating some kind of communications campaign. It could be a software-based solution. They could be targeting their work through policy change. We wanted to be flexible with that so that maybe some really new and novel things that we've never seen before might emerge. But it's just important that they fall within one of our key 5 focus areas, whether that might be workforce development, public financing of mental health, stigma reduction, access to digital health services. We're flexible how they do those things, but those are really the things we're looking for.
That is a wonderful explanation, and it gives me goosebumps. I'm sitting here like, oh my God, this is so amazing. I would love to see something like this. I'm like really excited. Let me just say period, full stop. I'm really excited that you are the person who is leading this type of opportunity, because I feel like there are insights, as you've already shared with us, that you have that really inform, for example, the fact that you're allowing flexibility for the system enabler opportunities, the fact that you recognize that there's a diversity of entities who provide direct service. And when we say direct service, I just want to make sure I'll clarify for everybody. We're talking about people who provide care. Who are the people who are working with these kids on a day-to-day basis, providing support? And so when you say RFP, like the request for proposals, is really about making sure that both of these types of opportunities are available. And even within them, you allow flexibility. And that, I can't say enough how important that is, because I think so often we get stuck in there's only one way to do a thing, right? There's only one way to really, and I don't want to get on my soapbox, but there's only one way to really understand whether or not something works, right? And in the science field, it's in behavioral health tech too, it's a randomized controlled trial. That's the only way we can know if it works. Well, I think what you're talking about is there are many ways for us to, I don't know, just sort of give runway to people who are already out there doing the work and say, okay, we want to support you. Clearly, you're already doing it because the kids keep coming back. You have relationships with the young people and their families. There's something you're doing right, like that fourth provider when you were a kid. There was something he was doing right that made you keep coming back and that made you feel better. So I love the idea of giving people latitude to do what they do best and trusting that. You don't know, that's music to my ears, just trusting people to do what they know how to do. So it's not that there's no vetting. Of course there's vetting. Of course there's review. But you're giving people space to say, you might be in policy. You might have some innovative way to change, like service provision to support service provision. You may have a communication strategy. We need all of that, right? It's not an either or, it's a both and. We need all of that to improve mental health for our young people. So I'm elated. If you wouldn't mind telling people where they can go to find a little bit more information, I think that would be wonderful. And then we can go to another subject. So,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, you're fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, where do they find more
Yeah,
information?
yeah.
Yes, the upswingfund.org.
Okay, very easy. You made it super simple. So I think, I could talk to you all day, but I don't want to keep you because I know you have other stuff to do. You're a busy woman. I wonder, what do you envision in two different areas? What do you envision as the future? What would you like to see? Where would you like to see behavioral health tech go? Let's start there.
Wow. I mean, well, there are so many factors. Okay, where do I even start? Number one, I do still think that stigma is a huge barrier, whether digital or not. Um, in some ways, digital is really powerful to help folks who might have some shame around uh, accessing mental health care. A lot of it could be anonymous. Maybe they don't have family support and they can leverage a tool, just have somebody to talk to through digital health tools.
Mhm.
But I do think that's still a barrier in getting them to reach out. And while I think things are changing a little bit,
Mhm.
maybe slightly less stigma around just anxiety and depression,
Mhm.
um, my hope is that this next generation, they do see things differently. And I hope that um, that continues to lessen stigma over time. But as you know, in communities of color, there's still so much stigma, but I hope we can address that. Additionally, different means to, as you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it's like they need access to the technology to be able to engage in the solutions. And it's not just the device, as you said, a lot of people have the device, but it's access to the internet to connect it. And so those types of pieces. But finally, this is a broader piece, but how are we ensuring that the system is talking to each other? Well,
Mm.
mental health still is so siloed.
Mhm.
How are we connecting that more? When we're talking about adolescents, the care
Mhm.
teams, it's like we can have digital tools, but how do we make sure that schools are talking to clinicians, are talking to families? And I think that can be strengthened quite a bit more.
I love it. I love it. So then finally, as we get to the end, first I want to say thank you, but I'm going to say thank you probably 1,000 more times. I wonder if you have any words of wisdom for, because what we try to do with the podcast is make sure that we're talking to teenagers themselves.
Mm.
Now I'm way past teenagers. I have teenagers. And you're a young woman, and I wonder if there's some words of wisdom that you have,
Mm.
you know, like I said, to kind of bookend it. You talked about what your experience was when you were a girl and the support that you had and the love that you had and the help that you were able to get. If there are any kids out there who are kind of struggling a little bit and I don't know what to do or where to go or are feeling isolated about dealing with a mental health concern, do you have any words of wisdom for those kids? Because you came through it. What would you say to those kids?
Yeah, the main thing is that, at least for me, when I was younger, the thoughts that I was having, they were so embarrassing. I thought I was so unique in what I was experiencing. And in fact, I remember as I was looking around for therapists to reach out to, I was looking for the oldest person I could find on the website because I thought, okay, if I find a person with at least 25 years experience, maybe there's a chance that they will have seen something as crazy as what
Yes.
I'm dealing with.
Yes,
Uh,
yes.
and it was until years later that I attended my first conference dedicated to OCD, and I
Yes.
finally actually met other people with OCD. It was such a powerful experience.
Yes.
Um, so it's really important to know that these conditions are so common,
Yes.
and you are not alone in what you're experiencing, and there is no shame in reaching out and connecting with a clinician because surely they have seen what you're dealing with. They probably saw it 4 times that day. So that would be my.
Oh, Solome, that's so beautiful. Thank you. What a beautiful way to end this. And you shared at the beginning where people can come to find you, Solomé Tibebu, all across social platforms. And it was Going Digital. What would tell me the name of the conference?
Yeah, they can visit behavioralhealthtech.com to access the videos.
Beautiful, beautiful. and the Upswing Fund, which you've shared with us that you're leading. And, there are a lot of us out here in the community, our mental health community is small, who are just completely cheering for Solomé. And we're like really excited that you're the person who's running it. Because we know what you bring to it, the passion that you bring to it, and the knowledge and the skill. So I want to thank you again for joining us on the podcast. I was like, what's the name of my podcast? On Couched in Color, right? And I want to thank you for taking the time and just for being so open and thoughtful and honest and sharing your experience. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Alfie. Really, none of this could be without your inspiration and mentorship as I set all of this up. It means so much to me and everyone that we're going to help. So thank you for everything, really.
Of course. My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, thanks, Solomé. So there you have it. That's a wrap for another episode of Couched in Color. We want you to know that we deeply value you, all of our viewers and our listeners, and everyone out there working to support optimal mental health, both for themselves and for our young people. And one of the best ways you can help our movement is by leaving us a 5-star review on our YouTube channel and everywhere you enjoy your audio podcasts, and by sharing our podcast with a friend. Please also tag us while you're out there listening and watching. Finally, head on over to dralfie.com for more information about me, www.acomaproject.org for information about my nonprofit, and those are the places you can go to learn more about how you can help. So I'll see you next week. And until then, I'm going to say what I always say, which is that I'm wishing you lots of love, lots of light, and that I'm hoping it is always, always informed by good, culturally relevant science. Take care.